from our day just because it's going to be, there's a lot to pack into 3 hours. So I'll just kind of go through this and give you a quick introduction of myself. I don't want to take too much time talking about me. Anyway, so I started fine art portrait photography in my living room when I lived in California. And so I was primarily a natural light photographer. And then I started getting into print competition and I wanted to challenge myself a little bit. And so this is kind of where I started. I was sitting on my coffee table and I was just draping up whatever newborn fabric I happened to have at the time. And that light was like just like an $85 light from Amazon. It had just like the little twisty bulbs and all that stuff. So that being said, you can really create art with anything as long as you play and you practice and eventually kind of get you somewhere. So I kept progressing and I kept growing with my art, and eventually I won my first my first GIA in children's portraits in 2019, I believe it was. And so this particular image too was shot in my basement. It was one light setup. I think I was still using just whatever fabric I happened to have in my basement at the time. And I couldn't even tell you which modifier I was using. It's possible that I didn't have one. But I just kind of bug it. And it worked out pretty well. I consider myself an intuition photographer. I'm not very technical. I don't have a light meter, gasp. And so Pete Rizak, he's come to town and he's given me a bad time about that. But it works for me. And I usually tell people, it doesn't matter if you're an intuition photographer like me, or if you are a little bit more on the technical side, both are fine. So just accept it and roll with it. So most people know me for this, which is my overall GIA from 2020. So when I did this particular image, this was also shot in my basement. I think I had 2 lights on this one. And again, I was just kind of had an idea and I just kind of went with it. And this is what I ended up with. When I won the overall GIA, I was a little bit in disbelief. And even after the fact, I kept waiting for them to come back and say, you know what, we made a mistake. So I get a little bit of imposter syndrome on occasion. Everything I do it looks about like this. I almost always have a child on my lap. All of my art has always been created with the child on my lap. And so I'm surprised there's not one in here right now, actually. This is where I'm at. This is my family. That's my husband. We live in Colorado Springs. And so I have the 3 babies. They keep me very busy. And then in 2020, we had an opportunity so we had actually just come out of the lockdown and everything was still really weird and uncertain. And I had an opportunity to come look at a space for our studio. So I brought my best friend. This is Jessica Valia. I brought her with me and we saw the space and we just kind of fell in love with it. We think that we were maybe a little bit crazy at that time, but we just went with it and just kind of took some chances. So we eventually adapted the studio to be our own. So we just painted everything. This space was actually part of Window World. So this was their kind of like their showroom of like their windows and doors and different things that they offered. And behind those facades is it's just like our gear closet and different things. So that's where I do most of my art now. I'm no longer in my basement. This right here is pretty much my go-to setup for children's fine art portraits. So I have usually my main light to my right while I'm shooting, so camera right. And then I usually have a smaller PLM. Both are PLM umbrellas usually when I'm shooting with this. And sometimes I'll bring down that 54-inch PLM umbrella just a little bit lower to kind of give a cool little catch light in the subject's eyes. But this is usually where I'm at with this. And I no longer shoot with alien bees. I'm all about my Godox lights now, mostly because they're cordless. But I like them a lot better anyways. Okay, so a lot of people ask me about my wardrobe and styling for children's fine art portraits. I have quite the prop closet in our studio space. So we have like this long hallway type space in the back where we put all of our dresses and all of our props and all of our textures and anything that we want to add to our portraits. I say we now because since having the studio, I've grown from just a business of one to I have a team now. All right, so here's some of my fine art portraits. When I'm looking for wardrobe and I'm going to purchase wardrobe, I'm always looking for something with texture, right? So the girl on the left, that's like a wool type texture, but I love the contrast between the kind of almost itchy wool with the satin and silks of the scarf and then the sleeves. Then obviously to the right, there's like knits and the wood textures and all of the different furry textures from that hedgehog. Anything I can find with texture, I usually will add to my wardrobe closet. I love props. I think, again, anything with really great texture to it, anything with really great detailing to it. I find props in a whole lot of different places. That little hat on the little guy, I made that myself just because I had kind of a vision and an idea. I didn't want to make it out of paper because I wanted to be able to reuse it. So I just went down to the fabric store and I got some fabric that I thought would work for this. And then I just kind of Googled how to fold a paper hat and that's what we got. The periscope that he's holding is just from an antique store. And then flowers. I love flowers. We have tons of flowers just kind of hanging out in our studio that we just add in for a little bit of color, a little bit of texture, something to really, especially when you're working with children, you want to give them something to hold so that it kind of shapes their body, shapes their hands, and it just kind of relaxes them a little bit to having something to hold. All right, color combinations. I am huge. I love anything where we can do complementary colors. So I love the contrast of cools mixed with warms. And so almost always in my photos will you see cool tones mixed with warm tones. And so that's where the pops of the colors of the flowers kind of come into play. So again, anything I can find that I'm putting in my space, I'm incorporating the textures, but also looking for really great color. So a lot of people ask me where I find my wardrobe. And I kind of find it all over the place. Really anywhere I'm just looking, I'm always looking at Target or online, all sorts of places. So Amazon has kind of been my go-to recently because you can actually go in and type in, I'm looking for vintage inspired girls dresses, or I'm looking for prairie dresses, or I'm looking for little boys velvet suits, something like that. Amazon is pretty good. And you end up going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I'm always like adding things to my cart. So I have like a whole list in my Amazon of just things I want to kind of come back to, different pieces that inspire me. So Amazon's a really good one, budget friendly. I found some stuff on Facebook Marketplace. We actually have a Renaissance fair that happens here, so I found some period pieces there. Small boutiques. There's so many small boutiques and people that just have, they usually get it from Amazon or different vendors out of China, but you can usually find some really cute pieces to add to a prop closet. I do work with some couture designers. What is helpful for me is that when I have these pieces in my closet, so I could be buying a $900 dress, and I'm okay with justifying that, because what happens is it becomes like a statement piece in my prop closet, to where my clients will come and say, hey, I have my daughter, she really wants to wear that one dress that's on your page, and so I have it. So some of the couture designers that I work with, actually their dresses will resell for pretty much the same price that I bought it for. So it all works out in the end. Rentals. There are a few designers that I use who also will do rentals. I prefer not to rent because I like having the pieces in my closet at a whim. I hate going to the post office, so I hate returning the dresses. I also don't like the stress of having to maintain and make sure I'm taking care of somebody else's dresses. So I don't do that. So some places to rent are going to be Little Dreamer Tutus. They do rentals. Bentley and Lace does rentals. Your fairy godmother is a good rental place, and they have a little bit of a whole bunch of designers at, in their shop. Okay, when it comes to hair and makeup, if you've ever heard me speak, or if you've ever heard me talk about different things on my page, I am a big advocate for anti-human trafficking. And so I truly believe that when you are photographing children, it's really important to allow them to be children. So that being said, you will never see them in anything provocative. You'll never, almost always they have sleeves. I am very minimal with the hair and makeup for kids. And so here are some things that I like to avoid, just because, like I said, I think it's important to let kids be kids. All right. So when kids are coming into my studio and moms are asking, okay, what should I do with them? How should I dress them? Should I put on any makeup? I think a lot of times moms, when they're bringing their kids into the studio, they think that they have to overdo it and put lipstick on and different things. And I usually just tell them, just hydrate their skin. Chapstick is plenty for children. Maybe a tiny bit of mascara. So, and the only reason I do that is just to kind of enhance the lashes a little bit more. And it just kind of helps to define the eyes. That's all stuff that I can do in Photoshop, but if you can start off with a good foundation like that, it gets you pointed in the right direction. A little bit of blush, so nothing too heavy, nothing too dark, just enough to make the cheeks look a little pinky. If I'm afraid that a parent is going to be a little bit too heavy-handed in their application of some of these things, I'll either offer to help, or I'll just not even mention blush and I'll do it all in Photoshop because it's easy enough. All right, some things to avoid when you're dealing with makeup and kids. So I don't do intense colors or eyeshadows on children unless there's some sort of a reason for it. So like, let's say, for instance, maybe you're doing an Alice in Wonderland Mad Hatter theme and you want to do theatrical type makeup. Obviously, the storytelling part of it lends itself to having a little bit more dramatic makeup. But if you're just doing a nice fine art children's portrait, I avoid the intense colors. So same thing, not too much eye makeup. You don't want to overdo it with children. You just want to let them look pretty natural. Because if you go a little bit too far, it will stand out and it kind of almost pulls away from the look of your images, especially if you're doing kind of a vintage fine art look. So avoid dark lip colors. This is, for whatever reason, this is just a big pet peeve of mine when people put dark lipstick on children. It just looks a little too, it looks unnatural. Again, if there's some sort of a purpose for it or a storytelling situation that you're diving into, that might be a little bit different, but for this type of image, I would avoid that. All right, so these are just kind of a couple of examples of everything that we just talked about. A mix of textures, cool with the warm, any of that. I love this. So this little girl, I mean, that's what she looks like. She has amazing eyelashes, just like that. She's got amazing skin. She's just a stunning little one. Here are some more. So obviously some textures mixed with little pops of color. The one with the peach, I actually did that for ASP. I taught an all-day class with them, and that's what we ended up with. And so kind of with my inspiration when I'm looking for textures, I pulled that fuzzy dress that she's wearing and I thought, okay, what else is fuzzy that I can kind of pair and create this kind of concept in peaches. And so we rolled with the theme of the peaches. And so I love that image. All right. So you saw the one with the girl in the blue and the roses, all client work here. Adding flowers, adding textures, all of that fun stuff. And then of course I do work with little boys. They're a little bit more few and far between, but I do have a lot of little boys that come see me as well. And then I also work with adults. So again, yeah, just kind of playing with textures and lighting and different things and kind of all of that fun stuff. So anyway, so that's a quick run through of how I style my children's portraits and whatnot. Any questions before we kind of dive in? Like I said, I don't want to take too much time on that portion of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to before I jump into my image. Anybody? No? Oh, okay. Let's do it then. Wait, exit out of here. All right, can you see Photoshop?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is, so I did what I call my petite sessions. And so I don't offer mini sessions in my studio, but I will offer petite sessions. And the difference in that is that they are not necessarily cheaper. They're just a smaller session. So if a client wants to come in and take advantage of having a fine art portrait, that's what we will do. And so when I'm doing my petite sessions, they are specific to a certain type of look or a certain type of theme. In this case, it was my fine art sessions. And so when they do that, they have to actually book it as a package. It's a little bit different than my regular sessions where they have to have the creative fee and then they come for their ordering appointment and we do a full 1 hour. My petite sessions are usually about 20 to 30 minutes and I stylize them. And so I did those last week. And so this is one of my clients. So we're going to dive in here. I don't know what she's picked yet, so this might not be one that she chooses, but we're going to edit it anyways because I thought it was really pretty. All right. So I have this one, or I actually have the two sisters together. We might actually have time for both, but I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with this one. Is everybody good with that? Okay. And if you
Absolutely.
have any...
Thumbs up.
Okay. Okay. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to unmute yourself. I love an interactive group, so definitely let me know if you want to see a step again, or if you want to, if you have any questions. All right. So when I start with something like this, this is the image. I haven't done anything to it in Lightroom or Photoshop or anything, and so I'm just going to let me minimize that guy. Okay, so here's Photoshop. And so I usually start by cleaning up an image and cropping it how I would like. So for instance, I'm going to come here, I'm going to crop it first. I don't have necessarily a set ratio. You will see me just kind of eyeball a lot of the things. If you want to know the specific numbers of any of it, just let me know and I can tell you. So I usually just kind of go in here and I crop it the way it looks right for me. So I would say in this case, about like that. And I'm going to press enter. And then I will go in here and I will adjust this backdrop. So I will just come in here with my square marquee tool. And I'll highlight those areas. Oops, there we go. And I'll do edit. Maybe. My pen's acting funny. Hold on. There we go. We'll do edit, fill, content aware, and it's just going to kind of fill in those spaces. And I'm going to show you how I would create a specific, like if you wanted to come in here and do a digital backdrop differently, I'm going to show you how to do that. So it's going to match this particular image. So edit, fill, content aware. And then we have a pretty good start to our image. So then what I'm going to do, what is this going on here? Oh man, I might have to edit with my. Sorry, my tablet's being not working for some reason.
Take a sec, no worries. Can I ask a question while you're sorting it out?
Yeah.
With the children's pieces, especially the ones for comp, do you hire the children? Do you act like, do they start as a client and then you're like, oh, I see something in you, and you ask them, invite them back? How does that work?
Sure. Yeah. A little bit of both, actually. Really, it comes down to whatever inspires me. I'll do anything. So actually when I'm working with children, when I was in California, I had a lot of children that I worked with who were in the industry. So models, actors, all sorts of stuff out there. So by the time I moved to Colorado, I actually had a national presence in the model industry. And so when I moved here, a lot of them came to me as clients. So children models are actually also my clients. So this is a client. Well, she also acts and models out of Denver, and so does her sister. So a little bit of both. Sometimes I have clients who their style, it really inspires me. And so I'll bring them back if I have a specific look that I'm going for, but sometimes I will just use my client pieces as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right, so let's see here. My tablet is not happy with me, so we'll just play around with my mouse. All right, so I'm just going to go around this image. I'm going to clean up little pieces on the backdrop. And so sometimes I'll use a spot healing tool for different things. This is a hand painted textured backdrop. And so there are some scuffs and wear and tear and stuff in there. So I'll just go around and I'll just kind of dab around and just kind of clean it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I want to, a lot of my prop dresses and stuff, they don't always fit my clients and the children perfectly. And so what I'll do is I will actually go in there and I will clamp it, or we'll do different things. And because you have to clamp it, you're going to see like sagging and drooping and different things where it maybe doesn't fit perfectly. And that's where I start to play with liquefy. So I'm going to push Command J to duplicate my layer. Oh, maybe it's going to work. And then we're going to do filter, or maybe not. Liquefy. Okay, so that's going to pop up. There we go. And with liquefy, I'm just going to come in here and do all sorts of different things to kind of shape the subject, shape her hair, move the dress around just a little bit, anything to really perfect the image itself. So there's a couple different things you can do in liquefy. Okay, when we take a break, I'm going to make this work, this pen. So there's the push tool in liquefy, and that one is awesome because I'm just going to come in here and push things around. With kids, you do have to be careful about what you're doing, especially with the younger girls. So I don't know, I would say like the tweens. And even teens, if they notice that you kind of started doing too much liquefy, that it can cause, some issues and different things. So when I'm doing this, I'm really kind of focusing on shaping the hair and the different pieces around her rather than reshaping her body. And then if any of these pieces are just sticking out just a little bit too much, I will kind of come in here and tuck them in. And then I do like to kind of fluff the dress a little bit. And then there's the pinch tool, which is a really pretty neat little tool to use. And so what you can do is if you have like an area of the dress like this, and you just kind of want to bring those pieces together, you're just going to use the pinch tool and you can bring that piece in a little bit more. That looks a little unnatural to me, so I'm going to go back to my push tool and move that up just a touch. And I think that looks pretty good to me. And so I'm going to go ahead and press OK. What did that just do? I think it just did all of that. Sorry, I'm not sure what Photoshop is doing to me right now. I just did a restart and everything. Let's see. We're going to do that again. I think you guys wanted to see that again anyways. All right, so push tool, I'm going to shape her. I'm going to shape her dress. Sometimes when I have kids and they're not quite relaxing, I will come in here in this space between their chin and their shoulder. I guess it doesn't even necessarily have to be just children. It can be adults and stuff as well. I will kind of push down this area in between their jawline and their shoulder. And what that does is it just kind of helps relax their shoulders just enough to where they look, like I said, relaxed. And so I will drop that down just a touch. And then I will push in the back just a little bit to make them look like they're standing up just a little bit straighter. There we go. And then I'm gonna press OK. And there we go. Okay. So I'm just going to move my way around the image here. Now, usually what I like to do is when I start to create an image like this, obviously we have it nice and well lit. But what I want to do is I want to flatten it out just a little bit. So, and that's going to help lend itself to that fine art style that I like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push Command J. And I'm going to do a camera raw filter on this just to, like I said, almost flatten it out a little bit, but we still have the highlights and shadows. So we're going to do filter, camera raw filter. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring down my highlights quite a bit. And then I'm going to up my shadows. And then I'm going to up my blacks just a little as well. And if it starts to look a little bit too warm, I'm going to bring down, I'm going to add a touch of blue and take that yellow out. And I'm going to bring down my highlights just a little bit more. So again, when I'm doing this, I'm not really looking at specific numbers because when you're doing this, it's going to be different for every image. And so I'm kind of eyeballing it to taste. And so this is usually what I would end up with. And so I want to make sure that I still have all of those details in the whites and then also some details in my blacks. And that's what I'm going for. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press OK. And so you can kind of see how it flattened it out. It gave it more of a little bit of a painterly look to it. And so I'm okay with that right there. So I'm going to warn you too, I'm also a merger. I will merge my photos quite a bit, unless it's kind of a more of a composite image. I merge a lot. And so I have a friend in California, she gasps every time she hears me say it, but yeah, it is what it is. I've never run into any issues doing it that way. It also helps to kind of keep things moving pretty smoothly through Photoshop. So when I'm doing fine art portraits, I don't mind merging. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to merge that down. And now I'm going to do one of my favorite techniques for kind of smoothing out the skin. This is probably the thing that people are usually looking for the most when they are asking me how I edit and how I retouch skin. And so I'm going to show you that now. What I do is I call this my brush on frequency separation. Again, it's one of those things where you could it's going to be different for every image based on how far or how close they are to the camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by pressing Command J. We're going to duplicate that layer. We're going to change the blending mode of that layer to vivid light. And then still on that layer, we're going to push Command or Control I to invert it. And then we're going to do filter, other, high pass. And then when I get to this part of it, what I'm looking for is those different tones in the skin kind of melting together. So you can't really tell where one portion starts and one color starts and one color ends. So right here on her arm, I'm kind of looking at that. It looks a little bit blotchy to me. So what I'm doing is I'm going to bring up this slider until I basically can't see that blotchiness anymore. So this looks pretty good for this particular image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press OK. And then we're going to do a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And what we're looking for here, you're going to see that it has like these weird haloing. Pay attention to that haloing there. And then right here on her jawline and all that stuff. The reason I say to pay attention to that is because we're going to add a masking box to this. And so anything that you brush on, you have to pay attention to those edges. You want to avoid those edges because once we put the masking box on that, they're still going to be there. So you want to avoid brushing them on. So what we're looking for when we're doing this is bringing back the texture in the skin. And we're just looking at those larger surfaces of skin. So down the arm, her forehead, her cheeks, all of that. So I'm going to adjust this until I see the smoothness of her skin the way I would like it. So obviously if we take down the radius, it's going to be it can be pretty mushy, and it's going to be, again, one of those flavor to taste type things. If I have more mature skin or male skin, I will do this much less, and I'll just bring it up just a little bit. So I would say for her, about right there looks pretty good to me. That's usually where I would land. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna press OK. All right. And so, like I said, pay attention to those halos and where those halos are, because we're gonna just brush it on the large surfaces of skin. We're gonna go over here to our layer. We're gonna add a masking box to it. And then we're gonna push Command-I to invert or make it invisible. So now all we have to do is grab our brush, just a regular white brush, and just a nice soft round brush. All right, we're just going to use a soft round brush. And it's okay, you can brush it on at whatever opacity you would like. I usually choose a pretty heavy opacity, but the thing with this is we created this specifically for her skin. So it doesn't really matter how heavy we brush it on, because it's not going to go any farther than what we created it to be. So when I'm doing this, again, I'm avoiding those edges because we don't want to bring in those weird halos. We just want to smooth out the larger surfaces of skin. I'll zoom in too, so you guys can see it a little bit better. I zoom out a lot, so I feel like it helps me to see things and the flaws a little bit better. So if you need me to zoom in at any point, just tell me. I look much more artistic editing when I have my tablet that works.
That would totally throw me off my game. Kudos to you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can do it. I used to, before I got my big computer years ago, I used to edit all on a trackpad on my laptop. So
Right on.
And I'm toggling back and forth between the white brush and the black brush if I need to. When you press X, it'll toggle back and forth. So I come here and we get this little part here. This will help too if you have this particular technique. It does really awesome stuff with if you have spider veins, or if you have like suntan lines and stuff like that. This will really help to blend those in. So it's a pretty great technique. All right, so I'm going to click this off and on so you can kind of see the difference. So she already had great skin, and so we really didn't change her too much, but it's just enough to say, oh, that looks really pretty. That looks really well polished and put together. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that down. So I'm going to do Command-E to merge those two together. And we're just going to keep moving right along. I can tell there's some little pieces on her face that I want to get rid of. And so in this case, so I also use regular frequency separation on occasion for different things. And so the traditional or regular frequency separation is also an awesome and powerful tool. A lot of times I will use both if the subject has a lot more texture to their skin. Is everybody pretty familiar with frequency separation? Yes, maybe no.
I bet we're probably half and half.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into frequency separation because this is pretty powerful, and even if you're not a portrait photographer, it works really great if you're trying to clean up details on a product or in the sky or different textures and stuff. So I'm going to show you how to build frequency separation. There are a few actions out there that you can use to just push play on frequency separation. If you go on to Flern, Aaron Nace has one that's pretty good. It's all the same thing. And so it doesn't really matter where you get it, but I'm going to show you how to build it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push Command J on that main layer twice. So Command J. And I'm going to make this first layer. This is going to be our tone layer. Okay. And then I'm going to come up here to this other layer. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to blur this. So this is our tone. So we're going to do filter, blur, Gaussian blur. All right. And so with the Gaussian blur, we're going to do kind of the same thing I described before, to where you're basically looking for the melting of the tones together. So you can tell there's a different color here underneath her eye, but you can't really tell where it starts or stops. And so that's what we're looking for, is that melting of the tones to where you can't tell where it transitions. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And then we're going to come up here to this layer up top. And this is going to be our texture layer. And for our texture layer, we're going to change the blending mode to linear light. And then we're going to go image, apply image. And then you're going to see this little box pop up. And what you want it to do is you want to tell this particular layer to speak to the tone layer. So we're going to come up down here. We're going to say tone. That's our layer that we picked. And then we're going to have that to subtract is the blending mode. And then when you're building frequency separation, it's always going to be 100% opacity. Your scale is always going to be 2, and your offset is always going to be 128. And then you're going to press OK. And if you did it right, it should look like nothing happened at all. So what I like to do is I'm going to highlight both of these layers, and I'm going to push Command G to put those into a group. So I group those together, and so they're both still there. They're just kind of in this little drop down. So let me go ahead and explain a little bit about what frequency separation is. So you're essentially you're separating the tones of the subject or of your image from your textures. So textures being blemishes, or in her case, she has a patch of dry skin right next to her eyes. We can use this on eyebrows and little hairs that you see, all that fun stuff. So that's what we did. So another way to kind of describe the difference between tone and textures is if you think about just a really pretty white cake, right? And it's fondant. So fondant is going to be really, really smooth. You can't really tell that there's any rippling or anything in it. So there's just a plain white cake with fondant. And so it's very smooth. Now, the texture is going to be, if we put a whole bunch of sprinkles on the top of this cake, that's going to be our texture. And so what we're doing in this case is we're just going to go in here to our texture layer, and we're just going to flick off the sprinkles so that everything looks nice and smooth. So hopefully that helps. So when I'm working in this texture layer, I like to go in here, and you can use everything from, you can use your spot healing tool. Spot healing tool works really great in that. So if I'm using my spot healing tool, it will go in here and it's just affecting that texture layer. So if I'm in here and I'm just getting rid of these little dry patches, it's just taking off the texture, but it's not affecting any of the color tones in her skin. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could come in here also with the patch tool and take this area right here and change the texture underneath her eyes. When you're doing this, if you're using the patch tool or if you're using your clone stamp tool, what you want to do is you want to make sure, so all texture of skin is not created the same. So for instance, if I'm coming in here with my clone stamp and I'm picking an area, I'm going to bring down my opacity a little bit into like the 60s maybe, and then bring down my flow. So I have my clone stamp. So when I'm doing this, and I want to pick a healthy area of skin that I want to clone. So for instance, right underneath her eye here, you want it to be close enough to that area of skin to put it over that same area. So what am I trying to say? So basically, I wouldn't sample a part of her forehead and put it underneath her eyes because it's not the same texture of skin. So I'm going to do right underneath the area that I want to correct, and then just bring that up and slowly soften that. This is really good for kind of like this blotchiness that can sometimes happen over by the lips as well. This also works wonders if you have a model who has, or an older woman who has lipstick on and they just didn't get it quite right or all the way straight. This is a really good way to edge that lip line. And then I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my spot healing tool and take care of these little patches here. So when I go back to frequency separation, I go into my texture layer and I click that off and on. It's just going to look like little, although all these little pieces or all these little sprinkles, so to speak, are going to be flicking off. I really miss my pen right now. I'll get it fixed on our break. I don't know why it's being mad at me. All right. So this also really works really well if you have anybody that has some like crazy eyebrow situation going on. So for instance, she's doing pretty good. She's got great eyebrows. But if for whatever reason there's some of these little pieces that aren't like she has, sometimes you'll have like some kids like that have all these extra hairs down here. And again, if they're little kids, it's not going to matter too much. You don't want to do too much to it. But she's old enough that I can kind of come in here and use my clone stamp. And I'll use this to come in here and get rid of some of those extra hairs. I'm going to bring up my opacity a little bit. And that way it just kind of cleans up that area a little bit more. Works great too if you have kind of a unibrow that you need to clean up as well. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do just a little bit more under her eyes just to get rid of these highlights here. That's another thing I always make sure to tell moms and stuff is to avoid any glitter. I'm sure you guys can probably understand why. But if they have glitter all over their face and it just kind of creates all of these little white dots all over, it doesn't look good. It just creates more work. So I usually tell people to avoid anything metallic looking. If we're going to do any highlights or whatnot, I usually like to use my airbrush machine, which has just kind of like a clear, wet kind of hydration thing in it. It's just like a clear liquid. And with my airbrush machine, what I'll do is I'll just kind of spray it all over their face and it just does like a really light mist over them. So it gives it kind of like that dewy look, not really wet, but just kind of enough to help bring out the highlights in their face a little bit more naturally without it looking glittery. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Maybe get rid of this one hair right here too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Actually, I'm going to open it back up. I want to show you what that did so you guys can kind of see the difference in the texture with when I click off this texture layer. So I'm going to go over here to this texture layer. I'm just going to turn that eyeball off and on. Oh, maybe this. There we go. So you can see the difference in what that did to her skin. It didn't affect the colors underneath her skin. It literally just took that texture off. So it looks nice and smooth and pretty. Okay. Any questions on frequency separation? Nope. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to merge that down. So we're going to do Command E. We're going to highlight the two and we're going to do Command E. Okay. So now what we're going to do is I want to come in here and do just a little bit of some dodge and burn, just enough to kind of make her eyes pop at the moment. And then I think we might take just a quick break because I want to paint this and I want to have my pen to do that because it would make life much easier. Okay, so let's do this first. Let's do a little bit of dodge and burn on her eyes and just kind of enhance her eyes a little bit first. So what we're going to do is we're going to have, we're going to duplicate our layer. So we're going to do Command J. And when I'm doing my dodge and burn layers, there's so many different ways that you can do dodge and burn. And so this is kind of my go-to way of doing it. So I'm going to change that duplicate layer blending mode to screen. So screen is always going to highlight. I'm going to add a masking box to that. I'm going to push Command or Control I to invert it. And then we're just going to use a nice soft round brush to brush on some highlights. When I'm doing dodge and burn this particular way, and so this is going to be basically, this is our dodge layer, dodge. I like to bring down my opacity into, I usually have it anywhere from 20 to 23% on the opacity, and my flow is usually going to be anywhere from 10 to 13%. So I landed on the opacity of 23% and the flow of 12%. And so what I'm going to do is when I'm coming in here, I usually will get a fairly large brush and I'll go down right down the center of their eyes and underneath. And I'll change my size throughout as I kind of go. And I usually will do like highlight right underneath the brow bone just to kind of enhance that area there. Right down the center of the eyes. Just to make them pop. Now, when you're dealing with eyes, you have to remember that they are spherical. And so one mistake I see a lot of people do is they will do dodge all the way into the corners of the eyes. But what you can see is there's always this shadowy part in the corners. And so you want to maintain that. You never want to go in and brighten that up necessarily because it's going to flatten out the eyes and they're going to start to look like zombie eyes. They're going to look too fake and brighten and just too intense. And so I see a lot of people do that. You also have to remember that the whites of the eyes, they're actually not truly white. There's always going to be a variation of some pinkish tones and some grays and maybe even a little bit of some cyans or blues, but they're never truly white. So the whitest point of your image should never actually be the whites of the eyes. You want to maintain that shadowing that's happening. So I'm going to back out just so you can kind of see. We just did just a hint. And if for whatever reason it's maybe just a little bit intense, all you have to do is come over here and bring down the opacity on that layer. We are going to do a full dodge and burn to the whole thing, but I kind of want to get this in place first. When I have clients who her eyes are not so dark that we are going to have an issue, but I do want to go ahead and create some shape lights in her eyes. So there's the catch lights and there's the shape lights. The catch lights in the eyes are obviously going to be the catch lights here that's kind of the reflection that sits on the glassy parts of the eyes. A shape light is basically the same light, but it goes through the clear part of the eyes and it's going to pool inside the iris of the eyes. So if you think about it, if you have a window and you're looking from the outside in, you're going to see the reflection of what's behind it on that window. And then if you were to come inside the house, for instance, and you're starting to see the light on the floor from the window, those are going to be your shape lights. And so I always like to go in here and enhance some shape lights in their eyes to kind of give it a little bit more depth and just make them stand out a little bit. To do that, I'm going to just come in here. I'm going to do a new layer. And then we get a soft round brush. It's already at 23% because we want to build it up slowly. And I will come in here and I usually do it opposite of the catch lights. And we're just going to do a slow buildup of a crescent shape at the opposite side of the catch lights. Okay. And so then I'm going to change the blending mode on this one to overlay. And what that is doing is, and that was just a white brush. So really all we're doing is we're just brushing on some brightness. We're just enhancing the color that's already in her eyes. We're not actually adding color to her eyes. So it's just enhancing what's already there. If your client has eyes that are almost black, what I'll do is I'll go in there with a lasso tool. So let me do this instead, just to give you an idea. Go back to the layer. So I would do, if your client has dark eyes, that particular technique won't work. But if you come in here with a lasso tool, I'm going to feather that at 5 pixels. And then I'll do a crescent shape here. And then I'll do one here too. Hold shift, and you can do them both at the same time. And then you're going to come up here to your adjustment layers, and we're going to choose the curves adjustment layer. And all you have to do is pull it up from the center, and you can see it's going to start to enhance that color. So this is, like I said, works really great if you have a client who has almost black eyes. It's just going to bring in just a little bit more of that detail. So I like the other way for this particular client, so I'm going to leave that as is. Oops, go back. All right, so we're just going to get rid of that curves layer and just leave the other one. And there we go. Let me zoom out. Any questions on that so far? No questions. Okay, so I'm
awesome. I can't wait to practice it.
Oh, good.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys, let's do 5 quick minutes, and let me go and adjust my tablet here just to make sure that we can paint properly, and I can show you guys everything a little bit better.
Yeah, no worries. If you need a few more minutes, that's fine too.
Okay, yeah. So let's do 5 minutes. We'll be back at, well, it'd be 12:05 my time. What is that? 2:05 your time?
Correct.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll see you guys in just a minute. This is gonna be so much better to paint with my pen. I was really lost without it for just a minute there. All right, so I'm going to show you how I like to, so I have all these beautiful hand painted backdrops and stuff, and I like them okay, but for whatever reason, I really just like the look of digital hand painted textures, which I have a bunch that I have created myself, and they're in my shop, but I'm going to show you how to create your own. And one reason why I like doing this way is all the tones will match the image perfectly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and press Command J, and then I'm going to come over here to my brushes. We're going to use a mixer brush. Okay. And I have a whole bunch of Richard's brushes. I get nothing for saying that I love his brushes, by the way, but I do. Richard Sturdivant, I love his brushes. I'm going to use this B02 rough oil brush, and I believe it's actually in his wildlife brushes. And so we're going to use the mixer brush, and this is the rough oil B2 brush. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to kind of come in here and make my way around the image. And I'm going to take from the center and brush it outward.
Shannon?
Yeah.
You're not, your screen, I don't think it's sharing, is it?
Oh, what? Oh, wait, here. Do we need to read? Okay, here. I'm glad somebody said something. We could have got.
I heard Wayne and said, I don't see it either. So maybe it's not just me.
Well, and I'm messaging people like, is it just me?
Yeah.
Oh, so funny. Okay, well, we're gonna rewind on that. All right. Okay, so what I did is I went ahead and I duplicated this layer. Thank you for saying something. Okay, can everybody see it now?
Looking
Yes.
good.
Yes, we can.
All right, so I have this B2 rough oil brush. It's a mixer brush, so you want to come over here and get your mixer brush. Does everybody know how to find their mixer brush? It's a pretty common thing that a lot of people don't, if you don't normally paint. So again, if there's something you can't find or you're not sure of, please feel free to ask me questions, because I get all scales of skills that I work with. So, all right. So I'm going to start kind of from the center where it's brightest. And I'm just going to start to drag those colors outward. So again, this is a mixer brush. If you're unfamiliar with a mixer brush, we are not laying down any paint color. We are literally just taking the colors that are in the image and mixing them together. So if you can imagine having, like, let's say you have a white canvas on just a painter's canvas, and you go and you grab actual like red paint, and you just do a dollop of red paint, and then you have a dollop of blue paint right next to it, and you start with your finger on that dry canvas, and you drag it through the red paint, and then you drag it through the blue paint, and then you keep dragging onto the dry canvas. That's essentially what we're doing. We are just dragging color until it kind of mixes together. So we're not applying any color, we're just dragging the color. So I'll go around and I'll do this a few times and just kind of build up that color and that texture back there.
So question while you're doing that.
Too much with the wetness and all of that stuff, or do you just kind of stick with a standard?
Sure. Sometimes I will change the wetness. Usually when I'm going in there and I'm painting the actual subject, like painting hair or painting the clothes, I'll change the wetness there. But when I'm doing a backdrop, not necessarily. All right. So yes, I think there were some more questions. So feel free to ask as I do this.
So do you do the same process if you plan on not painting?
If I wanted to create a new backdrop, totally. Yep, I would do it.
Okay.
But I love the colors that this brings into it. And then I don't have to kind of guess what colors to paint a backdrop. But what I'll do is I'll do this as a series of buildups. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate that layer that we just created. And then I'm going to do edit, transform, flip horizontal. Did it do it? It did not. So let's try it again. Edit, transform, flip horizontal. There we go. And then I'm just going to bring down the opacity on that. And then I'm going to do edit, transform, flip vertical. And you can kind of see it starting to blend a little bit better. It's everything is just kind of, you can still see that paint texture, which is really beautiful. And then I'm going to go in here and we're going to do a new layer, and I'm going to start to bring in some of that darker tone up at the top. And we'll just kind of mix it just a little bit more. And then I'll bring down that opacity just a little bit. And we have a nice pretty backdrop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge those all together so that they're just one piece. So I'm going to do Command E to all that painted texture. And so now what we can do is we can go in here where our subject is. I'm going to turn off this painted texture. We can go on here to our subject. We can do a quick select and say select subject. And Photoshop usually does a pretty good job of coming in here and picking out the subject pretty well and getting all those little pieces of hair. But I am going to go ahead and I want to refine those edges just a little bit. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do select and mask. If you notice too, I turned off this background one because if we go into select and mask and we have this turned on, we're not going to be able to see what we're doing. So I went ahead and turned this one off right here. We're going to do select and mask. So then we have her, and I'm going to use this refine edge tool. So it's this little hand here that looks like it's or I guess it's fibers, but to me it looks like a hand grabbing the end of a paintbrush. And so I'm going to make my brush just a little bit bigger. And it looks like it did pretty good around the whole subject, really, except for maybe some of these pieces in the hair. I want to kind of grab those, and then up here in her flower crown. So I'm not overly concerned with making this perfect because I know that I'm going to end up reducing the opacity of the backdrop layer when I get in there. And then I'm going to kind of take a little bit of this I'm going to dab around it. So like I said, I'm not really too worried about being perfectly precise about cutting it out in this particular case. If this was a composite, it would maybe be a little bit of a different story. But that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to press OK. And so then what we can do is, so now that we have this selection of our subject, I can push Command or Control J. And what that does is it puts her on her own layer completely cut out. So all we have to do is come in here and we can take this layer, this backdrop layer. So here it is, it's above her. But if we drag that backdrop layer behind our subject, it kind of puts her, there. So I like the backdrop that we painted. It looks nice. It's pretty, all that fun stuff, but it's just a little bit too much. And so I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to bring down that opacity on that backdrop. And there we go. So it's nice and smooth. I might bring it down just a touch more. And I think that looks pretty good. So that's why I wasn't really too worried about cutting out some things and making it perfect or precise right around the flower crown, because I knew that I was going to bring down that opacity. And also once we go in and we start to paint it, a lot of that stuff will go away anyways. Okay. So that looks pretty good to me. I am going to go ahead and I'm just going to leave those layers as is, but I'm going to leave them like that just in case we need to kind of come back to it for whatever reason. So I'm going to go ahead and do what is called a stamp visible. So all the layers that are turned on at this point, it's going to do a stamp visible. To do that, it's going to be Shift, Option, Command E, and you hold all of those down at the same time. And what that does is it takes all of these layers that we have down here and puts them onto one single layer. So all of our layers are still back there. If we need to go back and reference them for whatever reason, or drag them up or drag them down, whatever we need to do, we can. But we're going to be working on just this nice flat layer at this point. All right. So what I'm going to do is I want to come in here and we're going to start to do some dodge and burn. We're going to start to do some painting. We get to do all the extra fun stuff now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here. We're going to do a little bit of more dodge and burn. So we're going to push Command J. And we're going to do that twice. So before you saw me just do the dodge. So we're going to start. So here's dodge. So dodge tool. And is everybody, and then here's going to be our burn tool. Does everybody understand the reference of dodge and burn? I'm assuming. If not, it's totally okay. I've explained it many times before in the past, but feel free to let me know. So on this first layers, I'm going to press screen. So that screen mode is always going to be lighten. Okay, so that's going to be our dodge. So I'm going to add a masking box to that. I'm going to push Command I to invert it. And then I'm going to come up here to our burn tool, or the burn layer. And we're going to change that to multiply. So multiply is always going to darken. Going to add a masking box to it. So a masking box is always going to be this white box at the bottom with the black dot. And then we're going to invert that. So Command I to invert. I usually like to come in here and put dodge and burn into one group, just so I have it all in one spot. So I'm going to highlight those two layers and push Command G. And this is going to be our dodge and burn. Okay. I'm going to open that back up. So as I was saying before, I like to come in here with my dodge and burn tool, and I will almost always, well, I have it usually anywhere, the opacity 20 to 23% for the opacity, and the flow is usually anywhere from 10 to 13%. So I'm gonna make my brush a little bit bigger. When I dodge and burn, I like to be a little bit more zoomed out because I feel like I can see what's happening a little bit better, and in case it gets a little bit too heavy. So if you've ever, maybe you have or maybe you haven't. So if you're wondering about contouring somebody's face with the dodge and burn technique, you can actually go onto YouTube and look at makeup tutorials on contouring, and that's essentially what we're doing when we're dodging and burning. So we're accentuating the highlights and the shadows, and so that's what you're doing when you do makeup. When you contour somebody's face, is you're shadowing certain areas in order to define the face and shape the face a little bit more. So when I'm doing dodge, I usually like to start right up here underneath the brow bone. Then I'll come right down the center of the eye. And then I'll do a little bit of the cheekbones. So same thing over here, brow bone, down the center of the eye. And then I usually like to highlight that bridge of the nose underneath, like we're in between the two brows. Sometimes I'll do a little bit on the forehead, and then I'll come down the nose. I'll do the Cupid's bow of the lip, the little fatty part of the bottom part of the lip. And then I'll do the chin. And you can see where the highlights are naturally. And so that's all we're doing is we're just enhancing those. And then I'll come in here and I'll do down the arm. And the other arm. And you can enhance the collarbone and all that stuff here too. And then I will also use this to highlight the hair. Sometimes if they have dark enough hair, I'll go in here and I'll bring up my opacity. And this is again in the dodge layer. So we're just enhancing those natural highlights that are already there. I'm so glad my pen works now because this makes my heart happy. This is actually one of my favorite things to do is paint and do dodge and burn. It's just so relaxing. If you're a painter in any sense, it's pretty relaxing. Okay, so then I will come down here to different parts of the dress. And I'll enhance some of those highlights as well. Okay, and then we're going to go into our burn tool. I'm going to bring back down that opacity into the low 20%. All right. And so we're basically doing the opposite of what we just did. So we're just deepening the shadows. So I usually like to start right underneath the jawbone there. And I'll do right underneath the cheekbones, around the apples of the cheek. And then I'll come in here and I'll do right around the face, that hairline there. And then I'll use this in the darker parts of the hair too. Then I always like to go in here too, and I'll darken the lash line. So there's this beautiful shadow that happens right underneath the lash line. And so I will come in here and I'll deepen that. Again, this is one of those things where you have to be careful about not doing it too much, especially on little kiddos. And then I will also do use this to kind of come in here and darken the corners of the lips. And then right under here, underneath this pouty part. And sometimes I'll go right down the Cupid's bow. And this is a really cool technique too. So again, if you have brows that are kind of sparse, or there's just a lot of different things happening, this is one of my favorite tricks to adjust the brows. I will come in here and I will do a hard round brush. I am going to bring up my opacity to 100%. I'm going to bring up the flow as well. And I'll bring down my brush all the way down to maybe like 1 or 2 pixels. And I'll use this so we're still on burn. So I'm not adding any color. I'm just kind of coming in here. I'm going to do 2 pixels in this case. And here, sorry, I'll get in closer so you can see what I'm doing. I will come in here and I will actually draw brow hairs to help define and shape somebody's brow. So if there's areas that need like filled in, or, this works great for teens or adults, but I will use it on kiddos on occasion just to kind of like I said, shape and define everything a little bit more. This also works really great too if you want to draw eyelashes. I don't think I told you guys yet, but some of you might know. I actually used to be a makeup artist, and so that's why I obsess over these little things like the brows and the eyelashes and getting the eyes and the skin and stuff just right. Okay. I'm gonna zoom out. So before I go too far out, I'm going to click that off and on so you can see the difference in her brows. Okay. And so, like I said, if you needed to come in here too, you can also use this to do some more lashes at the bottom or up top, wherever you wanted to put them. Okay. And so then I'm going to go back, I'm going to bring back down my opacity. I'm going to do a soft round brush once again, and I'm going to bring it back down into the 20% in the opacity and back into the like around 13% in the flow. And we'll use that to continue to contour some things. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to darken this part of her dress right around the arm underneath. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to click this off and on so you can see the difference in the dodge and burn. And like I said, if it gets a little bit to be too much, I might bring down the dodge just a little bit. Those highlights. And that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to leave the dodge and burn. I'm going to leave that there. I do want to make the backdrop, I think, just a little bit more green to kind of fit the colors that we're working with here, and kind of tie in maybe just a little bit better to that headpiece. So we're not going to go quite that vibrant of a green, but I definitely want to add in a little bit more green. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and do, I'm going to do, should we do color balance? Let's do color balance. So I'm going to come over here to my adjustment layers. If you aren't seeing your adjustment layers over here to the side, so we're going to go over here to your windows and you want to click on your adjustment layers. And then you're going to see this panel pop up over here. So every adjustment layer over here is going to pop up with the layer down here in your layer panel, but it's also going to give you an adjustment panel. So for instance, if we come over here and we do the color balance, you're going to see this layer pop up. It already has a masking box attached to it. And so now we can come over here into our sliders and change those colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe add just a little bit more green. I might add a little bit more blue. And I'm in my midtones at the moment. Okay, so then I'm going to go into my highlights and do kind of the same thing. I might add a little bit more yellow, a little bit more green. And it is also changing her, but I'm going to fix that, so I'm not too worried about it at the moment. Okay, and then I'll go into my shadows as well and do maybe a little bit more green. All right, so I'm going to leave that as is at the moment, and I'm going to come back over here and we're going to do we can do this a couple of different ways. I don't want to confuse you, so let me think about this for a minute. Let's do another quick select. So same thing we did before. We're going to do a quick select on our subject. So select subject, It does pretty good there. So then all we have to do is come up here to our color balance that we just created. Grab a black brush, heavy flow, heavy opacity, and then we can just get a nice big brush and we can brush that green off of our subject. Okay, so it's all the way off. Okay, so I'm going to deselect that. And so it's kind of getting us closer to that right direction. I like the coloring just a little bit more, but it's maybe went a little bit too green. So I'm going to click on that color balance again, and we can actually adjust it from here without seeing it affect her skin. So I'm going to bring down my greens in my midtones. Maybe up the cyans just a little. And I'm going to go into my highlights and do the same thing and bring down those greens, bring down the yellows. And then back into my shadows. And I think I like that pretty good. So here's the difference. So we went from kind of almost a purpley brown, I'd say, to more of a blue. That looks pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and that looks about right. So now I think that we can go in here and we can start to paint that. Any questions before I start painting? None? Okay.
No,
All right.
but this
Is
is
there a
awesome.
reason? Is there a reason you do midtones, highlights, shadows?
As opposed to,
Doing midtones, shadows, highlights.
oh, no, there's no reason.
Okay.
No, I just kind of, I just work my way through all of those drop downs.
Okay.
I don't have an order. So, okay, so to paint. Okay, so I'm going to do a new layer for us. So down here, brand new layer. It's just a completely blank, transparent layer. And so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab our mixer brush. So we're going to play with the mixer brush once again. Move this here. So you guys can see. Okay. So with my mixer brush, so here's my brushes. In this case, I often start with the hair. I really like to paint hair. So I have this B3 hairbrush, also one of Richard's brushes in his wildlife collection. So I'm going to zoom into her hair and I'm going to use the mixer brush. I'm going to bring it down pretty small. And then I'm just going to start to work my way through the image. So I'm going to start up here at the base of where the hair is coming from. And I do have the wet at 71%. If you wanted to be pretty heavy handed with it, we can go all the way up to 100%. And that way you guys can kind of see it working and doing its things. And we'll just go through the hair. I'm just following the shape of the hair and the direction that it's going. So when we're mixing things, I'm never really trying to get rid of anything necessarily. I'm just making it look a little bit more painterly. And when I paint my images, I will end up bringing down the opacity quite a bit because I don't necessarily want them to look like a painting. I want them to look photorealistic, but have a painting type look to them. And so I'll do this. Again, we're not trying to paint anything away. We're just kind of following those hairs. I'll just work my way around the image. And just focusing on the hairs at the moment. Okay, and a lot of times too, when I'm doing this, I will, like I said, I like to work on different layers for different areas. So for instance, I'll come over here and I'll adjust my opacity for the hair. I'm going to bring that down. Maybe about like that. So that's at 64%. So you can kind of see the difference. It still looks like hair. It just looks a little bit more painterly. Okay. And so then I'm going to do a new layer. So as I'm doing everything on kind of different layers, the reason I do that is because a lot of times when I'm bringing down the opacity, for the hair, it's going to look different than the way I want it to look for, like, let's say these flowers up here. So that's why I do it that way. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab my Spatter 59 brush. It's also a mixer brush. Okay. Make that bigger. And so we're going to do very similar to the hair. We're just kind of following the light and shadows that are there. We're going to go with the same direction that they're falling. So I'll go all the way around the whole dress and I'll do this. If anybody has any questions, now's a great time to ask it. Otherwise, you're just literally watching paint dry.
So I see your brush is changing from black to white.
No.
No?
It's just a mixer brush. And so we're not it's not going black or white. Where are we seeing?
Oh, I just was seeing the tip. It seemed like sometimes it was a black tip and other times it was a white tip.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, it's literally just a mixer brush. So we're just going over the colors that are already there.
And were there times you were pulling too much dark down, so you went back the other direction to pull light back up into the dark?
Correct. So like right down here where the shadow was, because again, we're not trying to get rid of anything light and shadow wise. We're just basically coming here. We just want to create that painterly flow to everything. Okay. A lot of people ask me if I paint skin. I usually don't. I don't like the look of painted skin for myself in my pictures. And I feel like I do so much between the different frequency separations that it looks painterly anyways. And so I usually don't do it, which a lot of people are usually surprised to find. And they usually ask if judges notice. I have no judge has ever called me out on that. Because I think it seems painterly enough that it still kind of matches the look of everything throughout. Okay. So again, with that, I'm just going to bring down my opacity. Okay, and then we'll do another new layer and we'll come up here and we'll paint the flowers.
What is the gentleman's name of the brushes again?
Richard Sturdivant.
Oh, right. Thank you.
You're welcome. He's like my big brother, that guy. All right, so I'll just go all the way around. If this was a competition piece, I'd probably take a little bit more time to really smooth everything out. Actually, my World Cup image last year, this is that little girl's cousin. I don't know if you know it or not, but and I think that that's actually why they came to me, is because they wanted a similar art piece for them for these girls that they got, that their cousin got. So. Another question I get often is if I do this to all of my images for clients, and the answer is yes, I do. So if somebody books a session like this, and it's a fine art, session, I will paint it like this, and I will take my time to really perfect it and make it beautiful and look like a painting. When I'm doing these types of sessions, the reason I'm okay with painting an image to this level is because I do an all IPS in-person sales situation. And so oftentimes they'll come and we're not there to buy 30 images. They're there usually to get one really nice piece of art for their walls. And so I'm okay with painting it up. But usually they get, I would say, anywhere from 1 to 5 images. Okay, let me zoom out just a little bit. Okay, that's good. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do another stamp visible. So we'll do Shift, Option, Command E for another stamp visible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that all of my highlights, all of my everything is in place. And this is kind of like the final steps that I put on an image. One thing I do like to do is go in and enhance the catch lights. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that the levels are good. So I'm going to come up here to my levels adjustment layer. And here's our layer that popped up, and you can kind of see it's just a little bit off. And so what I'll do is I'll just bring this white point all the way over here to the base of this mountain, and I'll do that. Sometimes what I like to do, just to kind of redirect and keep pushing the eye towards her face, is since we're on this layer with the masking box, I'll come over here and I'll grab my gradient tool, and it's at 100%. And you want to make sure you're transitioning from a black to a white, or a white to black, either way. And then I'm going to start right here in the middle of her face, and I'm going to drag this outward. And so that's the opposite of what I want. So all I have to do is push Command I, and you can see it kind of almost gives it like that spotlighting effect on her face, and does a really nice subtle vignette. If I want, I could always just double this up, so we can push Command J, and it just enhances it even more. But I'm good with it being just the one. So we're going to get rid of that. And then just have that one layer there. I will also go in here and do a exposure adjustment layer, again, just to kind of push the eye towards her face. And so we have our exposure adjustment layer, and I will usually just slide up the gamma and then do the exact same thing. So gradient tool right from the middle of her face, just like that. You can see the difference there.
Could I bother you? I just step away for 1 second. That
Sure.
levels layer, because I think you only spent like a minute doing it. Could you just do that one more time?
Mm-hmm. Of course, yes.
Thanks.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn those off. I'll just ditch them actually. Let's start fresh. Okay, so levels adjustment layer. So we're here on our levels adjustment layer. Going to press that guy. And I'm going to bring up, so you can see that the histogram is off just a bit. And so I'm going to bring this white point, and then we're just going to bring it up to the base of that mountain there. So all of my white points are where they need to be. Then I'm going to come over here and grab my gradient tool. And you want to make sure you're on your radial gradient too. So it's like the little dot in the center. And you want to make sure you're transitioning from white to black or black to white. And I'm going to put my point right in the middle of her face. I'm going to drag it outward. Okay, and so you can see that that's the opposite of what I want it to do. So I'm just going to invert it. So Command I, and so now the light is happening here. And we're going to do the same thing with an exposure adjustment layer. So I'm going to come over here to our exposure adjustment layer. I'm going to up my gamma. And I'm going to come over here again with my gradient tool, radial gradient, transitioning from white to black or black to white. Pull it from the center out. And there you go. So this is just creating like that nice vignette around her that doesn't look too overdone or too dramatic or anything like that. And again, it just pushes our eyes towards her face, which is essentially the brightest part of the image, which is what we want. The only other thing I think I would do is I'm going to do a new levels adjustment layer. And this is where I'm going to enhance the catch lights in her eyes. And so I'm just going to bring that white point way up. So about right there. And then I push Command I to invert that. And then we can just use that little white point. Let's do a soft round brush. And we're going to bring down the opacity just a little bit more. And then I'm going to come in here with my those catch lights. And I'm just going to enhance those just a touch. There we go. And sometimes I'll also use this to enhance like different parts of the water line. So this is the water line. It just helps to give it kind of that sparkle. Zoom out so you can kind of see the difference. And there we have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to grab all of these layers and put them in a group just so I can kind of show you. I can click this off and on for you and show you exactly how much we did, which is usually always a little bit shocking. It doesn't seem like that much, but it's a lot. So I'm going to click this off and on so you can see the difference. And there we go.
Wow, you made that look easy. It's so beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's subtle changes, but it's always shocking to me to see it. But yeah, I love it. It's a lot of fun to do. So I know we still have lots of time to do some more. So I would like to,
Shannon, can I ask a question on this one?
please do.
So the space between her top and the skirt of the dress, that skin there.
Yeah.
So there's a little piece of white. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So would you do anything with the skirt anymore or no? Would you leave it as it is?
We can go and do, that's a great question because I'm going to show you, let's do some tricks. Because there's a lot we can do with that. Yes, let's do it because that's a great one. Okay. I'm going to do a Shift Option Command E. Okay, so we'll just say everything's great. The image is polished up and stuff for the most part, but we still have this one little piece. So there's a couple of things we can do. Let's go back in and we'll do liquefy. So now that my pen is working, this might be a little bit easier for us to do. So with the push tool, you can come in here and you can start to push this in and do some things and push this up a little bit more if you would like. There is the freeze tool, which I don't use very often. Here we go. So freeze, we could freeze all of this. I'm not going to keep it this way. I'm going to show you a better trick actually. And then once that's frozen, you can actually come in here and start to smoosh this around and it won't affect anything. So you have to be a little bit more precise with it. And then we could close that off. And so this will take a little bit of patience and a little bit of doing, but you can do it and make it happen and make it look really well. But let me turn. I'm going to press cancel because I'm going to show you a better way to do it. So I'm going to press cancel. And then we're going to go on to this image. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick, I'm going to get my lasso tool. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to go right around the edge of this dress. And I'll come down like this. Okay, so now I have this little piece here. Ooh, that was feathered. You want to make sure it's not feathered. So 0. I'm going to grab this part of the dress. Okay. And then we're going to do Command J. And what that did is it put that piece that we just created on its own layer. So now what we can do is we can do edit, transform, warp, and we can just start to smoosh this up higher if we want to, really anywhere we want it to be. If you still want it to show just a hint of skin, I think that that's okay too. We'll press enter. And then we're going to add a masking box to that. And lean a little bit closer. Use a black brush because black is going to take away. Let's up my opacity here. All right, and I'm going to show you something too. So when you're doing, if you're doing a relatively straight line, what you can do is you can do a point. I usually like to use my mouse in this case, just because my pen is pressure sensitive. And so I'll use my mouse and I'll do a solid point here. And then if you go to your next point and you hold shift, it's going to do a straight line. So you don't have to worry about having an uneven edge. And then we can just come in here and get rid of that. And then I would probably come in here and get rid of some of these hard lines that created just from that selection to help it all to blend a little bit more. Okay. And then you can always go in here and do an exposure adjustment layer. And so that we can shadow this part right here that would be underneath her arm. So I'm going to up my gamma and you're going to right click, create clipping mask. And what that does is it tells this exposure that we created to only speak to this little piece here. Okay. So then we can come in there, we can invert it and use a soft white brush. I'm going to bring down my opacity so we can build it up slowly. And then we're going to use a white brush. There you have it. You could even go in there and smoosh it around just a little bit more with the, what am I trying to say? I'm gonna merge this down with a liquify tool. So filter, liquify. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did that help a little bit?
Well, yeah, no, it just, you know, it just, to me, that's kind of made her waist look a little bit better, and like the garment fit her a little bit better.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. That's a good lesson too, to show. So I'm glad you asked about it. So obviously this isn't a competition piece for many reasons. But it's a really great client piece. If I were to change this up a little bit to be a competition piece, there's actually probably some technical flaws that would hold it back from ever going into competition for me. Like for instance, I want to see her hand a little bit. I think as the session progressed, I have somewhere I see a better view of her hand. But yeah, overall, I think this is good. And now I hope she picks this one, so I don't have, you know, because I've already edited it.
So question, not to get too gear heavy here.
Sure.
But I'm guessing you're somewhere between an 85 and 100 millimeter based on like her face hasn't been like sucked in by a 24 millimeter. So is that where you're shooting usually, or?
Yep, that's usually where I'm shooting. So I actually will shoot with my 70 to 200 in studio. And so I would probably say on average, it's probably around 100 millimeters, I would say, give or take.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions on this one? Let me ask this. Is there anything specific in regards to Photoshop that you want to know, or anything specific about my style that you want to know? We can edit another image. We still have quite a bit of time, or we can even talk a little bit of marketing. I am an open book, so I like to adjust to whatever you guys want to learn to make sure you get the most out of it. So talk to me.
Can you go over a little bit more about color grading by chance?
Color grading. Yeah. So how I do it specifically?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's a lot of ways that we can do this. So when I'm working with like changing colors and different things, so I usually try to first of all get the skin correct. As far as actually adjusting the whole tone of the image, I will come in here and I'll do like a what am I trying to say? Duplicate my layer. So gosh, there's so many different ways to do color grading. And I've watched tutorials on it, and like the people start with their color boxes up, and it always like blows my mind because it always gets so technical and complicated. So I guess when I'm working with color grading, I will go through and I'll treat different parts of the image separately, very similar to how I was painting the image. So for instance, if I wanted to change the color of the flowers, I would do that. But as far as like actual color grading and going in and doing like a color overlay on everything, it's not usually something I do too much of in my portraits like this, aside from changing the background color. So maybe can you be more specific on what it is that you're looking for as far as
Yeah. So like your picture that you had, I was on the cover of PPA magazine. It had the bird as a branch. I mean, were those the right, like, how did you get that tone of that color cast? Or was that photographed like that with the temperature? Was it like, I'm just gonna
Sure.
help me understand kind of how that was built and how, you know, you put it all together to make sure the colors were, you know, aligning correctly, you know, they weren't opposites. Does that make sense? So.
Sure. Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm not very technical again when it comes to, I see color pretty well. And it's funny because I have a couple of interns who are very technical. And so I make jokes about being able to see color like to this level. So when it comes to when I start an image in studio, I always start with my, I shoot on a gray card to make sure that the color tones in their skin are correct. I always like my skin tones to be as true as possible, which most of us do. Obviously, when you're adjusting an image or you're making it a little bit more sepia or whatever, it works to kind of go with more brown tones. That particular image, in regards to the coloring in it, my inspiration started first with, and let me bring this up actually, just so you guys can have a reference to what I'm saying. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I started with the inspiration for this was very much the color tones and wanting to do bright colored flowers mixed with a cool backdrop. So again, I love the contrast of cool and warm. So I wouldn't say that I pulled out my color wheel and said, hey, I need this particular color of red and I need this particular color of blue backdrop. So it was just more so the color combination. I built that headpiece from scratch myself, and that's pretty much the color of the headpiece. And then I had the dress made because I knew I wanted to go with like that darker blue tone for that. And then I just kind of played off that when I created the backdrop. So I did shoot her on a blue backdrop, and then I added some texture to it. So I wouldn't say I really did too much as far as like changing the colors of anything for that image. Let me find another one actually where I maybe did adjust some colors.
So on your website, just your, I think your academy. There's a picture of some young girls holding some old grass, brown. It's like the brownish tones, blonde hair. I don't know how to.
Does it look
show my screen,
painterly?
but yeah.
Or does it look? Let me see here. Let me go find it actually for you. Is she on the Creative Academy, you said?
Yeah, front page, or under the about, I think, section, front page. Then I think it's the second row down. Very brown looking, brown color tones. I don't want to say they're muted, but
Does she have a let me go about. Oh yes, okay. So
Yeah.
you're talking about this one right here, right?
yeah. So
Okay,
I'd like to
cool.
hear a little bit more about how you're balancing those colors out and all, because I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's not how you photographed it. So
No, it's not. So okay, so let me, yeah, I'll bring up that one here too for us. Let me actually go grab it. So let me do that. Okay. So that one actually was one of my images this year in IPC. So it was in the children's category up for the GIA. And so let me bring that up so I can actually talk about it. Okay. So it looks a little bit more orangey there. Actually, yes, that's changed quite a bit. That's not the one. But I'm going to show you how I did do that, the color grading to kind of match all of those tones. Because it is a lot of fun. So with that one in particular, what I was kind of going for with that is I wanted to make sure that when I had it, let me see if this is it. Okay, there we go. So when I pulled this image, so this background that we have here, this looks like a painting. That one actually came from, it's actually a mix of, it's this image right back down here at the bottom. In this thumbnail. So I actually got those from, you can actually go on to, let's say, the Rijksmuseum or the Louvre Museum in Paris, and you can go onto their website, and there are so many different paintings and different things that are loaded on there for download because they are public domain. So you can actually go grab those, download them, and put them in the back of your images as backdrops or textures or whatnot. Richard Woods, he actually made a whole collection, and they're on his website as well, and of different paintings like this that are public domain that you can use in your images. And so what I was trying to do is I wanted to obviously match how I shot her. So I shot her very similar to how I shot this subject, right? So it was on a gray backdrop. They looked like her skin tone was normal and neutral and all of those things. And so I wanted to match her to this. So when I'm doing something like that, so like, let's say we have an image and the background is really cool. Let me go see if I can find some. The background is really cool and the painting looks really cool. And so what you want to do, let me see here. Okay, so I have some of Richard Woods. These are his that he has in that collection. And so let me find one that's a little bit more cool that I can kind of place in the background, that I can kind of give you an idea of what I'm working with here too. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and let's go ahead and drag it into our image. I would just adjust this just to be in the background just a little bit more. Let's go ahead and do a quick select on her. So we're going to say select subject. Okay. And so since we have her cut out and then we have the backdrop in the background there, we can go over here. We can add a masking box to it. And then we can invert that, right? So we have those flowers in the background. And then I can come in here with a black brush and brush this off a little bit more. We just kind of want a little bit of a texture happening in the background there. And I'm going to bring down my opacity just a touch more. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to come over here. We're going to grab it. And we're going to use the other side of the base, I guess. Bring it into our image. Drop it in there. We're going to do another quick select. So quick select on our subject. Okay. Come up here to our backdrop, add a masking box to it, Command I to invert it. And then we're going to bring down that opacity to match the other one, which was 26%. Okay. And then we can come back and grab our black brush. I'll get to the color grading, I promise. All right, getting that off of there. Okay. So let's just say, so it all has this really pretty, nice, cool, bluish tone to it as a whole. She's maybe a little bit too warm. And so what we want to do is match those tones as a whole. So this isn't the ideal image for it, but it works. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a stamp visible. So we're going to do a Shift, Option, Command E. And with the image as a whole, the way I like to marry things together, color wise, and I do this a lot with my different elements that I use for a composite. So I'm going to do an effects and we're going to do a color overlay. And then we can come in here and we can choose a color that we want it all to kind of match to. So I'm going to pick some bluish tones. Press OK. And then you have the option to do a couple of different blending modes. So sometimes I'll do like an overlay, sometimes I'll do soft light. And then obviously multiply is going to make things just a little bit more moody and dark. And that's kind of how I would adjust it. But when you do it, it's going to take a series of steps to kind of bring all of that together and make sure it looks correct. So let me see here. Let's do. So I'm going to do, I think, let's try overlay maybe. Nope, I like soft light. I think I like soft light for this one in particular. So I'm going to press OK. And then if I needed to, so for instance, with this dress on that girl, this is a pretty true gray. And so I when I did the overlay over the top of it, it matched all of those tones a little bit more. But when you go in here, so for instance, let's say her dress is, I mean, to me, it's still a little bit too grayish. There's almost even like a hint of magenta to it. And so I want to tie that into the image overall. And so with that other image, I went into the grays, or I went into her dress. I'm going to do a quick select on just the dress. Okay. And then you can either do a color balance or you can go in there and do a hue saturation slider, or you can do a selective color. It just is going to be a matter of knowing which one is going to get you to that spot a little the best way. So for instance, let's go in here. Let's finish selecting the dress. Because what I'm going for is I want this dress to be more in these tealy colors. So let's see here. Let's do a color effect again. Let's do an effects, and we'll do color overlay. And then maybe let's try multiply. Sorry, cancel. Let's go back. So I'm going to merge this down to this one. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to isolate the dress from that, from the selection. So let me go ahead. I'm going to merge this down. Okay, so I'm going to do a new one. So we're going to push Command J. And then I'm going to do a quick select like I did before on her dress. Okay, and we're going to do an FX color overlay. And I'm going to change that to multiply. Oh, it's going to do it all over the whole dress or the whole image, which is okay. And then I'm going to go in here and again play with the blending modes until I get it that color that I want. That's why. I'm going to press OK. And I think multiply is probably going to be the best in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to right click on our effects. And I'm going to say create layer. And what that did is it put this color effect that we have on the image up here on its own layer, right? So now we can add a masking box to it. And you can see it's only affecting the dress because we had that selection there. And so then we can use that to come in with a white brush and brush it on the areas that we want. So it's basically a slow process of building up till we kind of get everything, all of those tones to look similar. This is not the ideal image to do that particular technique on it, but you kind of get the idea of where I'm going with it. So I would come in here and I would do all the things, brush this on in those areas just to kind of get it a little bit closer to matching that background. And then if we needed to go in here and do like a color balance to match it even more, we could definitely do that too. Does that help at all? Kind of.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So really color overlay is in the effects panel. It works wonders to kind of get everything to marry together.
So then when you made that whole photo warm, you just did an overlay for the whole photo, right? Towards the end.
Yep, towards the end, exactly. So it's kind of baby steps throughout the process of matching those color tones, but then in the end is when I do a color overlay over the whole thing, just to kind of help marry everything together and make it look like it was all meant to be there.
Do you add textures to the whole thing afterwards as well, or do you think that's kind of early 2000s type technique?
I mean, it's not something that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it can look a little bit overdone if you're just simply adding a texture over things. So I usually don't. I like my textures to be on the backdrop specifically, and then having the subject isolated from the textures. So
now, where did you say you found all these backdrops or the paintings? The creative or whatever you call it, the
public domain.
Public domain.
Yeah. So so there's a couple places that you can look if you wanted to go on to the actual museums. I think most well-known museums will have a public domain area on their site. So Rijksmuseum, I think, is out of Germany or Poland. And then there's the Louvre on their site as well. So these Richard Woods, gosh, and his site is actually always a little bit tricky to find, but let me see if we can find it. So Richard, I know a lot of Richards, I think. Oops. Richard Woods. Art. Artist. His site is always a little bit tricky to find for whatever reason. I think it's because his name is so common. Richard Woods studio, maybe. So you can go onto his site, Richard Woods. He's on Portrait Masters.
Oh, so is that through Sue Bryce?
Yeah, I always have a hard time finding his site though. The Portrait Masters, and I'm not sure why.
It's
Richard
because she has a chain wrapped around him and she keeps it tight.
That's you're probably 100% correct.
I wouldn't let him go. He's amazing.
I mean, he's pretty great. But I don't know why it's always so hard to. Maybe this is it. Oh, we found it. RichardWoodsEducation.com. Okay, so if you go into his shop, here they are, right? They're right here at the top. I am surprised that they have a price on them because I don't know if you can. I don't know. Anyways, so here you go. If you go into his quick view, you can see, he has some of these paintings and different things on there. I don't know how many are in this collection. When I got them, there was a lot in the one collection. So maybe he separated them out. And then here's the floral one that I just brought in. So there's the floral collection. You can see it has all of them are in there. So on his site, you can go get those. And that's basically what they are, is they're famous paintings that that are from museums, and then they've been public domain, and that's how we got them. So you can either go pay $5 and get his collection, or you can go to some of the museums and scroll for days and find the things that you want. So those are pretty good. And that's where I got those. So public domain is pretty interesting. Basically, people have been gone long enough that nobody owns the rights to them anymore. So you are allowed to go do things with them, which is actually why you'll see the Mona Lisa used on all sorts of different promos and different things and in different ads and whatnot, because it's public domain at this point. So yeah, there's that. Let's see what else. So let's talk maybe just a little bit about marketing. Is that something you guys want to see or hear about?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of questions that I get from people are how I let me actually go in here. I actually have a slideshow. Let's do a slideshow. Don't judge my desktop. I'm an artist. Now I clean it up often, and I've had some issues with my computer lately. It's time for a new one. And so I'm in the process of doing all those things, but it's kind of a hot mess right now. Okay, let's go here. So when I am working with my different clients, and let me bring this up. Okay, so I think a lot, my photography business is all very much fine art based. And so I think a lot of people don't know that I actually make a living doing this. And they think it's just, I just go play and I do pretty things and stuff like this. But pretty much what you see is all the things that I offer for my clients. And so while I have my fine art photography niche, people do still buy into it. And so my fine art photography style is very much how I make money. And I use that for maternity, for seniors, for every client that I work with, I apply my fine art style. So let me do this. Sorry. Okay. Okay. All right. So when it comes to creating a fine art style and having this incorporated into your business, I usually tell people to show what you want to sell. So if you don't want to sell, a session with family all in graphic tees, you wouldn't post that on your pages or your website or anything like that. You don't present yourself that way. Only show what you want to sell. So that includes posting on social media, your website, like I said, and only use the things that you love to do in your promotions and ads. So if you don't like it, don't show it. Just don't even go there. So like I said, the more I started to create these fine art images for people, the more it just kind of became my style. That's what people come to me for. So the more I did these fun photo shoots and these fun sessions, that's what people actually are booking me for, whether it be maternity, family photos, or just individual portraits of children. It just kind of became my style. And the more I showed these different things, the more I started to get clients who would actually show up with their own swords. So it makes for a fun and interesting business. So when I first started doing these fine art sessions or incorporating my fine art sessions, I knew that I wanted to go that direction with my clients, and I wanted people to book me for these particular sessions. And so I wasn't sure how to really grab those types of clients or really create a portfolio that said, hey, this is what I'm doing. These are the type of sessions I have. Like, this is what you should pay me for. So I didn't really have that stuff in my portfolio. So what I did is I created my petite sessions. So as I mentioned before, my petite sessions aren't necessarily cheaper. They're just a shorter amount of time for these particular sessions. And so what I would do is I would create these petite sessions. I would shoot them all in one day, and they'd all have a particular look to them. And that's what I did. I'd spend the whole day. And usually when I'm doing my petite sessions, I don't do like mass production or anything like that. I usually started with 4 to 8 sessions in a day, which is still a lot for me. But I'm not doing like 30 or 40 or anything like that. So when it comes to the fine art sessions, like you just saw me edit, I was always prepared with the types of wardrobe that they wanted to wear. So for instance, that girl that I edited, I knew her size before she came in, and I had dresses hung and ready in my dressing room before she even got there. And so when she did get there, she could try them on, and I had more of a plan for each of the sessions before they actually arrived. When I do my petite sessions, I only book them in packages. I don't do a creative fee for them. They have to buy a package up front, and they have to pay in full before I even give them a spot on the calendar for the day. So all of my petite sessions, like I said, are anywhere from 20 to about 30 minutes. And all of these packages include a print of some sort and a mix of digital files in the prints. This is kind of an old pricing guide here. It's since adjusted, and I change it now and then for different sessions that I offer. But I really don't do petite sessions very often. I'd say maybe once or twice a year will I do something like this. It's always a very specific type of setup or session that I'm doing. I don't do Santa, I don't do seasonal mini sessions or anything like that. It's either something real specific, like my fine art portraits, my butterfly portraits, or my Vanity Fair portraits. I've updated my pricing a little bit since I put this on here. But generally speaking, this is kind of where I go with all of my pricing guide. So I have different labs that I work with. My fine art prints are probably my #1 seller, which I'll kind of go into here in just a second. But folio boxes, the second I added folio boxes into my lineup of things, of products to offer, it increased my sales greatly. So these are my folio boxes from 3XM, and they're amazing. And then I also offer different types of usually canvas prints. I do offer metal prints, but usually what people are going for are my fine art prints. Okay. All right. So a lot of people ask me what my average sale looks like, because they're, again, kind of confused at how I make a living with not doing high volume. And so I would say on average, this is kind of without going into my P&L, On average, I would say my clients spend about $3,500. I have had multiple 10K plus type of sales. Usually they're my seniors, and a lot of times it also incorporates some sort of a composite in there. But I've done it a few times in the last year or so. I only want about 6 to 8 clients a month. That's kind of my sweet spot to kind of keep things moving and not kind of overwhelm myself when it comes to editing the amount of photos that my clients purchase. I don't touch the images at all until my client has come for their ordering appointment and paid in full. So when they're coming for their sales session, everything is completely untouched, and so they're looking essentially at raw images before I do anything to them. I will maybe do a little bit of Lightroom adjustments, but only enough to kind of make sure it's a well exposed image so that they can kind of see all the details, but overall they're usually not touched at all. On average, I would say my clients walk away with about 8 images. I prefer them to walk away with 5. I'm happy to sell them 8, or I'm happy to sell them even 30 images. I would say after about 5 images, I get tired of editing the same image over and over again, or the same style, I guess, over and over again. So I like to change it up. All right, so here's my top sellers, I guess. Graphy is a product that I offer. I'm probably going to be discontinuing it from my lineup. They are kind of my 3rd best seller, I would say. But mostly all my clients lean towards my folio boxes from 3XM. I love these. As soon as I added these into my lineup, my sales increased by, like $5,000. I offer these boxes of 20 for around I think $4,500 or something. I think is what I had that at. But my number 1 seller is going to be my print from Miller's. So I describe this as my fine art print. So this is from Miller's. It is backed on Masonite, and it has a palette texture over the top of it. And I always tell people it looks like a painting. So you can kind of see the texture a little bit in this shot. And it just really lends itself to my fine art style that almost all of my clients go towards that. This is also probably one of my higher profit margins as well. All right. So, I think fine art is kind of becoming a little bit more popular as far as like what photographers are offering. But when I started, it was kind of something that was a little bit of my quote unquote purple cow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Purple Cow. So the Purple Cow is a book that I haven't read. And somebody told me about it once, and I laughed because I don't read a lot because I am so busy. Life is kind of crazy. But when somebody told me about this book, I really liked the idea and the concept of a purple cow. And essentially what it comes down to is if everybody in your town is a black and white cow or a brown cow, you want to be a purple cow. You need to find your purple cow as a photographer in this market right now. You need a purple cow, something that makes you stand out in your industry so that people recognize you and come to you and choose you over another person. So for instance, like I said, fine art was kind of my purple cow, but now it's become a little bit more popular. And so I'm adjusting. And one of my purple cows is actually butterfly sessions. I will actually do live monarch butterfly sessions. And it's not something that I go into or teach because it's my purple cow. And so that's the one thing that I guard. And it's the one thing I kind of keep to myself. It's not rocket science, but it's difficult enough that not many people can replicate it and offer it here in the area. So it's become my purple cow. And so people know that I offer these at a certain time every year, and they wait to book. And I've actually had people come from different states to come do my butterfly session. So that's my purple cow. So kind of just going through some of the businesses and what different businesses are known for, just to kind of spark some thought for you is when you see this, what do you think of, right? For most people they think of the blue boxes. So Tiffany and Company, they are known for a few things, but usually they're blue boxes. If someone gifts you a blue box, you usually know what is inside it and you feel special just to have this blue box. Let's go this one. Okay. Olive Garden. They're known for, when you're here, your family, but also for the endless breadsticks. Other places have like different types of breads and different things, but Olive Garden has kind of made the breadsticks their family vibe. When you're here, your family, and you get endless breadsticks. So that's what they're known for. Home Depot is kind of known a little bit more for their slogan, right? How doers get more done. So if you are a doer and you want to get something done at your house, you're going to go to Home Depot. So you need to find different ways that kind of make you stand out and separate you from the other places, whether it be your slogan or something that you offer. So does anybody think that they have a purple cow now that they want to think about or that they would like to share? Don't be shy. No, nobody? No purple cows? That's okay. Okay. Take a minute to think about it. And what do you want your purple cow to be? Is it going to be a certain kind of a session? So like I said, I do my petite sessions, but I only do them in a certain, for certain types of sessions or certain types of sets. So if everybody in town is offering Santa sessions, I don't do Santa sessions. Because it's not one of those things that separates me from the masses. There's plenty of people who offer Santa sessions and they're all probably using a lot of the different or the same Santas. And so if I ever do offer a Santa session, it's going to be something that is way different than any of the other sets that are here around town. And that's the only way I will offer it, because I am always looking for some sort of a purple cow that sets me apart from everybody else. So you got to think about what your purple cow is. All right, so find your purple cow. So think about what your purple cow is now, that one thing that sets you apart that's different from everything else. So like I said, for me, it's my butterfly sessions, it's my fine art sessions, and it's also my composites. Okay. Sometimes it can be customer service, but when you're really thinking about your purple cow, you want it to be something that, like I said before, can't be easily replicated. What makes you stand out, right? It can be customer service, but anybody can be good at customer service. So you really need to find ways to kind of separate yourself from other people. But you can also include customer service or specific products. So thinking about what your clients recognize about you, your work. A lot of people recognize our studio space because of the facades that are in there. That's memorable. I usually try to create a fun experience for kids so that they always want to come back. Because a lot of times, not everybody is good with kids. And so that when they come into my studio, I want to make sure that they have a good time, and that they are always anxious and excited to come back for the next one. So what I'll do actually is I have a treasure box that they can pick out a toy at the end of their session, and they always remember that. And when I'm doing composites as well, they always remember that I put them in an image with a polar bear, and I have clients that come to me often and talk about their experiences. Okay, all right. So what's the start button? So for fine art sessions, I will get through these talks sometimes, and people are like, okay, that's all great. You showed us how to do the things, but what's the start button? How do I get started in creating fine art sessions for my clients? And the answer is you do petite sessions. If you want to start offering fine art sessions in your lineup and you want people to book you for those, you have to show it on your pages, your websites, to get those clients so that if they don't see it, they don't know that you offer it. So go create some petite sessions, plan them out accordingly. If you need to do a model call in order to create a promo so that people are going to book your petite sessions, go do that, stylize it, and then put it out there and start booking those petite sessions. And the more that you start booking those and sharing those images and putting them into your portfolio, the more clients will book you for that particular style. So like I said, you got to make a plan, create a model call, and then share those images to promote your petite sessions for your fine art sessions. All right. Any questions about that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So going back, I'm not sure if this has done the whole gamut. I think it has, but your video game image did, right?
Mhm.
Which no one got the hearts right away, which because I'm like, if you're a gamer, you know what the hearts mean. Like, come on, give her a break, people. You want to just yell out at them?
That could be too.
So involved, right? So
Yeah.
2 questions about those.
Okay.
How are you moving those that are usually a lot more involved, take a lot more hours in your, because it's not like a painterly background, you're creating a whole scene environment.
Correct.
And then I know we're running out of time, and I don't want to hog it all, but like, how do you handle your highlights? Because you're shooting in studio and like there's like a fire highlight in the background, and how are you doing that? Because I'm always curious.
Yeah, let's go find it. I want to bring up that image so everybody can kind of
But
see.
the marketing part is my most, because I do stuff like this, and it is hard to get someone who wants to pay for what that takes.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. That's for sure, to try to get people to pay for it. But I will say that adding those to my, let's bring it up. Okay. Adding, composites to my senior sessions is how I break the 10K mark often. So I know it kills me that they didn't get the hearts either. And like, clearly, like,
Yeah.
I don't know how.
It's a lost generation, apparently, because
I
they're
mean, something, right? Oh gosh, I had so much fun doing this one, but so this is his senior portrait. It is one of them, and so often I will have these different seniors that will come in, and usually boys, and they're like, well, fine, I'll do the nice, pretty senior pictures if I can have something fun and creative, and that's usually what leads to this in particular. So this kid, he even has a YouTube channel, and so we wanted to kind of tie in his love for that and gaming and give him a senior portrait. And so this is what we kind of came up with. When I am presenting a composite to a client, a lot of times it's either they're coming for specifically for this, which I call them my imagination sessions. They're coming specifically for this, or if we've shot the image already, I'm like, hey, we could add on a composite if you want to. And these are kind of my ideas of what we could do. So my imagination sessions is when I am describing them to my clients, I'd say, we could do this. What it comes down to is this is presented as basically a commissioned painting. Okay. And so with a commissioned painting, I cover the cost for any of the elements that I have to add into it. There's a lot of time that goes into it. There's going to be painting, there's blending colors, there's adding all the various elements. So it is like a commissioned painting. And so they usually understand what that means when I put it into that, when I explain it like that it's like a commissioned painting, like, oh, well, paintings definitely take some time. You have to mix the colors. You have to put it on a canvas. You're essentially starting from scratch. And so that to me seems to be what helps for them to grasp that in their own brains. And so that the price is justified. My composites right now are 2,000, and they include a 20 by 30 fine art print. And they don't get the file for that. So I don't give them the file on something like this. If they want duplicates of it, they have to print through me. Again, because it's like a commissioned painting, it's not a mass production thing. When I shoot, so usually when I shoot this, it's usually on a gray background, and we go through the concept together. And then once I get the pieces in place, I'll send them kind of a rough outline of what it's going to look like before I start doing any of the heavy lifting on this image, so that I'm not putting a whole bunch of work into it before they change their minds on anything. And I haven't really had any issues with any of it at all, really. And then what was the other question about this? There was something about...
Yeah, so you're shooting in studio, and
Yes.
obviously you have like your regular light setup, but then you're feeding in your fake highlights, right? You're painting them on. How do you go about doing your process for that?
Yeah. Baby steps, I guess. So you can see down here at the bottom, I just shot him. He was actually on a white paper in this case, but it wasn't I didn't light the paper. So it ends up being a little bit more on the gray side. But what I like to do is I'll light them fairly flat in Photoshop so that I can go in here and actually draw on these individual highlights.
Mhm.
So let's go here. So if, let's say, let me get rid of some of this stuff. Okay, so let's do this, and I'm going to show you. So let's say, for instance, we have our model, and there's going to be like this glowing light source that comes in from this side for whatever reason. It doesn't tie in with this image well, but let's go ahead and do this. Let's do a quick select, and we're going to do select subject, and let's just say that she was already cut out for a composite image. So we're going to do all things, make sure we have all the pieces. Let's do select a mask. Let's put cancel so we can see what we're doing here. Let's do a select a mask. So when I'm doing a composite, I will come in here and I will make sure that all of these pieces are cut out well, first and foremost. If they are not cut out well, you're going to run into a whole bunch of issues.
Mhm.
And so I will come in here and I'll do all the fine tuning and, polishing of this. Let me see here. Okay. I'm going to press OK. And when I'm cutting out a subject, I will come in here. So I'll do the refining, and we'll press Q. And then I can see like maybe any of the pieces that I missed or need to get back. And so white is always going to bring back. We're going to do a full heavy brush, hard round heavy brush. And so when I'm cutting things out, I'll go in here and I'll just make sure that I have all of those little pieces. Because like I said, if you don't have a good cut, you're going to run into a whole bunch of issues when it comes to compositing. So in this case, I definitely would be a little bit more specific. So I'm not even being that good here, but I would do this quick mask and I would go over and make sure I have every little piece. Okay. And you're going to see why too. So I press Q and we're going to go back out of that. And then once I have my beautifully cut piece, I'm going to push Command J. I'm going to put her on her own layer. So she essentially becomes a whole other PNG layer. Okay, so let's just say for the sake of being able to see what I'm doing here and show you is we have this glowing, we'll just do yellow. We'll make it pretty.
All right, I think I know what you do then. Okay, I keep going, but I think I have.
Yeah? Okay, good. So
because you could do this by also creating a solid color, right, and then clipping it, but you're just creating a whole layer and doing it that way.
Correct. Yeah. So
Yeah, okay.
if we have, let's say we have a glowing light coming in from the corner. Oops. You're going to do a radial gradient of a color, and this is where our glowing light is coming in, right?
Yep.
Command T. So sometimes I'll do this like with like the sun and different things. So you can do it that way. And that's our light source. Okay. And so I'm going to drag this behind her. But let's say we need to create more of a rim light on her, like from the sun that's coming over here. So there's going to be like this rim light of color. And so you can see it on him, on the kiddo here. So I had to come in here and create this rim light on the back of the chair because we had this coming in. And then I had the warm glow behind his head. And then I had a little bit of this blue glow from the TV and different things. So that's essentially what we are trying to create. So I'm going to do a new layer above her, and I'm going to use that same color that we put on the background for the sunlight. And we're going to come in here, we're going to start to create some glow. So I'm going to use a nice big brush. And I'm going to use a soft round brush in this case. And what this comes down to is a buildup of color. So I'm going to come in here and we're just going to go right around the edge. And we're going to create this sunlight glow. I'm going to bring down my opacity even more. And I'll just start to kind of brush where I think that light would hit. So again, this is why it's so important to make sure you get that cut done well. Because as I go in here and I do a right click, create clipping mask, it's going to catch on to every little piece that I didn't actually cut out. And then it would kind of fall off as it gets lower. Okay, so then I'm going to come over here to this layer and I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. And you can kind of see it might be a little bit intense in certain areas.
Mhm.
But then once it's in this mode, you can kind of come in here and brush it on where you think it needs to be a little bit more of. And then you can bring down the opacity. We'll warm it up on her face a little bit. And create a little bit of that light wrapping around it. There we go. Okay. And then you can always add a masking box to it and brush it off in those areas, but I'm going to keep going. So we're going to do a new layer, and we're also going to do a right click, create clipping mask. And when you're starting to build up your layers, I like to blend different modes. So I will often blend overlay and soft light, and that's how I kind of get my glows, is that mix of the two. So I'll come in here and use, let's go with a little bit of a heavier brush, and then I'll do even more of a refined highlight, more so right on the edges. And then I'll even use this hard brush to come in here, and because when the light hits, it's not just going to be like a hard edge to it. That light's actually going to hit different hairs, and it's going to kind of wrap around a little bit. So I always am trying to make it look as realistic as possible. There we go. And then I'm going to change the blending mode on that one to overlay. And what that's going to do is it's just going to start to build up that glowing light, so it looks like it's natural and it was meant to be there. And then if we needed to, like I said, you can go over here, add a masking box. And we're going to do a soft round brush. And slowly brush that off of this area that looked like it just looked like it was getting a little bit too yellow right there. And then if you needed to build that up just a little bit more, you can. So Command J. And then we're going to do a right click. Create clipping mask. And then if it's too intense, just bring that second one down. And I would probably do all of this before painting, just that you can go in here and really create and blend that out. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and push Shift, Option, Command E. So we're going to do it on a new layer. And we're going to use our blending mode here, or excuse me, our mixer brush. And then we'll blend that color through. And then I'm going to do a new layer. And a lot of times what I'll do is just to kind of make it even a little bit more believable. I'll come in here with a hard brown brush and I'll do it 100% opacity and 100% flow. And I'll bring it down to like usually 1 or 2 pixels. So kind of like what we did with the
Eyebrows.
Yeah, the eyebrows. And so I'll just come in here and I'll start to bring back a little bit of that light, and I'll bring in, oops, not that. Let me bring down my brush more. Let's do one. And I'll actually draw individual hairs. And this is why I missed my tablet brush just a little bit. Because I can't do this with a mouse. There's just no way. And I'll add a little bit of stray ones and stuff here and there just to, make it look, like I said, more believable. And then I'll bring down my opacity just so that they're there, but they're a little bit more transparent, I guess. Let me bring it out.
Wow. Well, thank you. You did that like in 7.5 minutes. That's impressive. That's impressive.
I know. I was like, wow, I like that better than I thought I would.
I'm like, that looks really nice. And I'm wondering too, then if you were doing, how you made your background, if you had if you knew your light was coming there, would you do your mix, create that palette with the yellow coming from there too then? For you.
You mean as I'm creating the backdrop?
Yeah, when you painted all over her to make that backdrop, right? And then you created that as that was your matte in the background. Would you do that if you knew the light was coming from a direction as well, or do you like it just dropped on top?
I think I like it dropped on top.
I do too. That's why I was just wondering. Like, I really enjoy the way it just kind of pops off the green now.
Yeah, I do too. I like how it worked out. Good suggestion too. But I think the reasoning is because if I were to do it on backdrop, it would look on the backdrop, right? Doing it this way, it feels like the light is separate from the backdrop. It's not on the back.
Right, it looks organic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a light leak rather than light on the backdrop.
Yeah, it looks. I like the warmth it just brought to it.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I'm gonna save that one for her mama. Like I said, she fixes it because it's pretty.
Thanks for walking me through that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking the question. It led to awesomeness.
Awesome.
All right. What else you got for me? What else do you guys want to know? I'm here for all the questions. Well, we got something. Come on, we got at least 6 minutes. I'm happy to go over a little bit too if you want to hear anything else.
I always have more questions, but I don't want to hog it.
So kind of similar to what I just did. I created this one too, right? I had to do the dramatic lighting and stuff. I ended up painting this. This one just happened to be sitting on my desktop, and I have it both ways. I think this was one I painted a little bit more. I can't even remember who I taught this for, but I taught this for a different class too. But same thing, right? I added some light over here and then I brushed it on over here. It's a little bit less glowy, but same technique for this image.
I missed how you chose the color of yellow. Did you select it from the piece or you just kind of eyeballed it?
I kind of eyeballed it. So usually when I'm picking a pretty warm color, I'm usually hovered somewhere in here between the orange and the yellow. I don't want it to be too greeny. I like it to be more in the warm orangey tone rather than the green yellows. So I just kind of hover in here somewhere and then I pick a color close to that area. And it's got to be light enough that it has a glow and it can't be too dark or too gray. Otherwise it just doesn't work. Quite the same anyways. That worked out pretty well. Let me see what else I got for you. So this one I edited it very similar to what we did today. I just ended up adding some haloing to it. This is one of my halos that I have in my shop and I just tossed it in there. But even with this one, you can kind of see the detail that I went into. Let me actually open it up in Photoshop. You can kind of see the level of detail that I went into in actually drawing the hairs. So this one took a little bit more time than obviously what we were doing, but same thing. I went in here and I did all the painting and then I went in and did different variations of hair colors throughout just to kind of get this look. So everything looked blended, but it all looked smooth and come on. Yeah, ended up painting her dress, all that stuff too. I left her browse as is. That's kind of one of her things. So she is actually, her family they are clients, but she actually models quite a bit as well. And actually, oh, here we go. This that one's not a composite, believe it or not. I do have those wings in my studio. They were maybe like a third of the size. And I ended up just selecting them and making them bigger for this particular image, but that is actually the same girl. And then this one, I'm not sure if those flowers look familiar or not, but I ended up using these flowers. They are from this public domain image. So those flowers came from here. And then I cut them out and just kind of made them a little bit more dimensional, so it kind of fit the scene a little bit better. And I've worked on this image, for probably at least 2 years, because I could never figure out if I liked it or not. And it actually was in World Cup this year. This was one of them. But I was always kind of back and forth on this image, and even like working with Richard, he talking to him, he's like, I just don't like it. Like, he's like, it's just kind of whatever. And like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, but I guess it worked out. All right. Any more questions? What else you got?
I could watch you do this all day. I feel like you should start a business of just recording your screen.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I guess I kind of did.
Yeah.
I kind of did. I do have my Creative Academy where I do all of my tutorials and everything. And so I have a mix of, if it's okay for me to talk about it, is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I do have my Creative Academy. And so that's essentially why I created this, was because I wanted to, I get questions all the time about all the ways that I do things and how I edit. And so I just created a platform for it, basically. So my educational platform, I have master classes in there. So this is actually my first World Cup image from last year. And when I created this image, I actually did it with the intent of putting it in my shop. And so you get to watch me create a World Cup image from start to finish, basically starting in my studio shooting it. I actually had some professional videographers come and film the whole thing, and so you get to watch that in this tutorial. And then I go into all these other things, and I do have all my different products and different things as well. But now I have a membership where it's a full year where you can go into. And there's all of these different tutorials, and it's a mix of fine art and composites. And so you see me do a little bit of everything throughout that. So everything from, like I said, my fine art images to this one, I adjust the color quite a bit. It's just peachy image to my composites are all in there. And for right now, you get a month for free when you sign up. But yeah, that's why I created it, because I love to teach and I love to create art and show other people how to create art. And so there it is.